A boy dashes through Tokyo streets, sweat dripping as he clutches a box of beer. He bursts into a high-end bar, breathless, just as chaos unfolds inside. At a luxury table, Dagura Mitsuru, a wealthy company president, berates a timid waitress. Flaunting his power, he rages over being served a cheapskate, demanding Armando Gold instead. The waitress apologizes. It's out of stock, but Dagura grows nastier, humiliating her in front of his laughing companions. Before things spiral, the boy storms in with a golden bottle, bowing and apologizing for the delay. Dagger scoffs, questioning the bottle's condition. The boy calmly assures it's untouched, then firmly adds that while he'll obey orders, the president must stop harassing the staff. Stunned silence, then fury. Dagger flings a wine glass, hitting the boy who stays composed and bows deeply. A blonde man named Jiyu rushes in, apologizing on the boy's behalf, claiming he doesn't get the mood. Outside, the waitress gently wipes wine from the boy's face. She calls him Daikai-kun, asking if he's alright. Daikai smiles and says he's fine. She blushes and thanks him softly for saving her. A few years ago in Tokyo, a foreign company began building a casino on reclaimed land in Tokyo Bay. The city buzzed with nightlife and endless cash. But behind the glamour, it was a world ruled by mafia, yakuza, tycoons, and politicians. In Tokyo, money meant power. Before Kurosu Fuyudo's revenge lit the city ablaze, life was calm. Daiichi Inamoto was just a regular college student. No royalty, no secrets. His days were filled with classes, friends, and carefree fun. He had no idea his quiet life was about to collide. In university classroom, Daiichi stretches, dreading the reports he needs to finish. Maybe I could help. Nearby Kodo, Jiyu asks if anyone knows how to use it. Sedomaru teases him, questioning if he can even manage it, then asks if he's starting now. After class, Jiyu heads to his part-time job. Daikai, standing beside Seto, sneaks a shy glance at her. She smiles back, and soon, the two walk off hand in hand. Daikai grins and asks if they are officially dating. Seto laughs, teasing him for jumping ahead. Embarrassed, he notes she usually doesn't stay back like this, and spots a strange bite mark on her neck. She leans in whispering playfully that is being naughty today before dashing off with a giggle. Turning back with a wink, she suggests a summer trip for his upcoming birthday. Daikai, ever soft-hearted, melts at her affection. Later, he's at the hospital, sitting beside his mother on a ventilator. Smiling gently, he tells her about his lovely day with Seto, though her condition remains grave. As Dashi gets up to leave, a sudden thought pulls him back. His mother, emotional, asks why he returned. He gently takes her hand, promising to visit after class. He mentions his new part-time job, but she feels guilty for his burden. Daikai reassures her. He's on a scholarship, and everything's fine. Smiling, he suggests a beach trip tomorrow, reminding her how summer always lifts her spirits. She smiles back, encouraging him to do what feels right. The scene shifts back to Daikai, who is shown inside the bar where he works part-time. He informs the manager that he already saw off the customer and then asks about Sai-chin, wondering if there's any news about her. The manager, looking at his phone, replies that he's been trying to contact her, but she hasn't responded to any messages and hasn't been online. This was the same waitress who was mistreated by the president earlier. Dai-chen grows increasingly worried, stating that she's not the tech to ignore calls or messages. Something must have happened to her. His concern deepens and his tone turns serious. Then asks where Gu is. The manager replies that Gu is entertaining President Dagura in the VIP lounge. The president spends a lot, but is completely unpredictable. The manager seems uneasy, hoping that Jiyu doesn't end up upsetting him. Daikai reassures the manager, saying that Jiyu actually enjoys this kind of stuff and can probably handle it. Just then, Jiyu gestures toward them, signaling Daikai to come over. Both Daikai and the manager are shocked as they turn their gaze toward him. The scene shifts to Daikai greeting someone, asking if he had been called and how he could help. Suddenly, the president appears in front of him and gestures toward a man standing behind him, saying he brought something amazing that Daikai should see. The man hands over a visiting card, revealing that he's an impressive lawyer. Daikai, surprised, realizes the man is indeed a lawyer. The president abruptly yells at Daikai, claiming that people like him don't deserve to be visited by such a high-profile VI. The lawyer, still seated, adjusts his coat with a mysterious smile and affirms that since Daikai now knows he's a good lawyer, he can deal with him directly if there's any problem. For now, his business is done and he should leave. Though Daikai leaves, he finds something unsettling about the situation. He wonders how everything could be resolved so conveniently. Before exiting, he glances back at the group once more. The scene shifts to the outside. Nan Daikai is seen with his friend, Gu. He asks Gu how he managed to handle President Dagura after the fight. Gu explains that the manager invited him for a drink after the bar closed. Just then, Daikai receives a message from the waitress and he wonders if she had something to talk about, which is why she didn't show up for work. Gu, reading the message, teases Daikai, suggesting she might want to confess her love privately. Embarrassed, Daikai tells him to stop being silly, who jokingly says he would also like to go if she's secretly planning a love confession. A little later, the two friends arrive at a fancy hotel. Daikai finds the whole thing strange since it's his first time in such a place. He checks the message again, which includes a room number, 1815. Seeing it, Daki wonders what she wants to talk about in a hotel room. Jiyu says he doesn't know either, but Daki should go since it seems serious. Daki agrees and tells him he'll message in a while, then begins to walk toward the lift. Jiyu stops him and hands him an energy drink, saying he already drank half and Daikai should finish the rest. He smiles, but behind that smile is a dangerous look aimed at Daikai. Daikai drinks the rest of the energy drink without hesitation. As he walks away, Gu jokes that he won't tell Daichi's girlfriend that he worked so hard today. Daikai denies everything and heads straight to the lift. While thinking about the waitress, Daikai wonders if she brought him to this fancy hotel just to confess. He considers how he already has a beautiful girlfriend and would have to turn her down. But before he can think further, the drink starts affecting him. His head spins and within seconds, he collapses right in front of the designated room. A mysterious man is seen opening the room door and looking down at him. The scene cuts to the next morning. Daikai wakes up with a heavy head, feeling extremely strange. As he sits up on the bed, he realizes something is off. He looks ahead and is shocked to see the waitress lying motionless. Her body is bare and disheveled, as though she had been violently attacked. It's the same girl he had tried to help before. He checks her body and is horrified to discover that she's dead. The shock is so intense that his eyes widen and he collapses to the floor, falling off the bed. Now shown lying beneath the bed, Daichi mutters to himself, stunned and broken, wondering what he has done. Daichi stared at the lifeless body of the girl lying in front of him. Confused and horrified, he questioned why she was completely naked and why he himself had no clothes on. Suddenly, a sharp pain surged through his hand. He looked down and saw several claw marks as if something had scratched or torn at his skin. Before he could make sense of the situation, the sound of the doorbell interrupted him. He turned toward the door where the police were already waiting. Without giving him a chance to react, the officers grabbed him. One officer had pinned Daikai to the floor while others examined the girl's body. Observing the scene, one of them remarked that they were already too late. Daikai kept pleading with them, insisting he hadn't done anything. He kept saying he wasn't responsible for any of it, but no one listened. The officers forcibly dragged him away and placed him in jail. Meanwhile, one of his so-called friends laughed creepily at Daichi's misfortune, clearly enjoying his downfall. The scene shifted, now showing Daikai inside the custody of the jail. A lawyer appeared, approaching him and confirming that Daichi had contacted him 2 days ago. Daichi thanked him for coming. The lawyer smiled calmly, assuring him that everything would be fine now that he was involved. Daichi, overwhelmed with emotion, tearfully addressed him as professor and expressed his trust in him. While reading through Daichi's case file, the professor stated that Daikai was a 20-year-old university student. The victim, Sayaka, had called him to the Grand West Hotel. There, after consuming alcohol and possibly drugs, things escalated into the activity. An argument followed, voices were raised, and Summit turned physical. Daichi's anger, the professor noted, had gone beyond control that night. He had grabbed Tanaka by the neck and didn't let go. Her breathing stopped. Daichi just watched as her life faded away. Hearing this, Daichi slammed his hand on the table, denying everything. He shouted that it wasn't true. The police may believe he did it, but he kept insisting he was innocent. He argued that he wasn't even there, or if he was, his hands had no part in the murder. He begged them to talk to Jiyu. Jiyu knew the truth, knew exactly what happened that night. Daikai pleaded for someone to ask him. The professor responded that he had already spoken to Jiyu, not just him, but also Daichi's manager and his girlfriend, Meru. Upon hearing Meru's name, Daikai grew anxious, worried she must be deeply concerned. Then, thoughts of his sick mother crossed his mind. If she found out about this incident, it would completely break her. The professor then asked whether Daikai had consumed alcohol the previous night as his body had tested positive. Dorchu replied that he didn't remember. The professor reminded him that he couldn't handle alcohol and added another fact. Traces of drugs had been found in his urine. Dorchu was shocked. He could barely whisper in disbelief, but the professor confirmed the results. The report was clear. Something was definitely in his system, and now he claimed to not remember anything. Daikai, now furious, slammed the table again and denied taking any drugs. The professor calmly adjusted his glasses and continued. The victim's nail marks were found on Daikai's skin, and under her nails, his skin tissues had been discovered. The DNA matched. She had fought back trying to escape, and the evidence showed Daikai was the one she had been fighting. The professor reminded him that the argument with the victim had turned into a violent struggle. In that moment of anger, everything must have become a blur. A single moment of rage had ended it all. In that same fury, Daikai had strangled her. That was the police's assessment. Daikai, frozen in disbelief, muttered that this couldn't be true. Possible. But the professor remained firm. Denial was his right, he said, but he wasn't going to sugarcoat the truth. If Daikai wanted to fight for his innocence, the trial would take time. Weeks, maybe even months. And every single day, he would have to relive that terrible night. But Daikai's thoughts went back to his sick mother. He had been saving money from her treatment. If he didn't return to the hospital, she would be left alone. Anything could happen to her. The professor looked at him with a mysterious expression and offered a way out. If Daikai wanted to get out quickly, was only one option. Excited, Daikai urged him to explain he was ready to do anything. The professor then revealed that Daikai would need to accept everything he had done. This left Daikai in complete shock, but the professor continued. He explained the circumstantial evidence was overwhelming and all the proof pointed directly at Daikai. He could still fight to prove his innocence, but the chances of success were extremely low. Admitting guilt and showing remorse could be a better path. Sometimes, the professor explained, accepting the truth could help reduce the punishment. If this was ruled as negligent homicide rather than murder, Daikai might receive probation. That would mean no prison, no life sentence. All he had to do was admit it had been a mistake, just a mistake. But Daikai couldn't accept it. He kept repeating that it was all a lie, that he could never have done something like this. The scene shifts to the courtroom where the hero stands before the judge. He admits that Tanaka had called him to the hotel and he went. He had drunk so much that everything became a blur. His memories were scattered, but something had definitely happened. He just couldn't recall it clearly. He feels that he may have been the reason for Tanaka's death. He had lost control of himself in that moment. If he did anything wrong, it must have happened then. But still, his memory remains blank, and all he feels is a heavy sense of guilt. After this, the hero is seen walking towards prison, thinking about how he testified and accepted his guilt, only so he could receive probation. He believed this was the only way left to survive. Despite not believing he had done it, he had no choice. He simply wanted to return to his mother as soon as possible. Eventually, the judge announces the final decision. The sentence shocks everyone, 15 years in prison. Hearing this, the hero's eyes widen in disbelief as he looks toward the professor calmly adjusts his glasses and compliments the judge's decision, calling it amazing. These words ignite the hero's fury. He yells that this was not what they had discussed, that he had been completely trapped. His world falls apart. He can't believe he's being sent to prison for 15 years. Despite his protests and desperate cries, no one listens. The police officers restrain him and begin to escort him away. The hero pleads to speak with his lawyer, but the judge denies any further hearing. The sentence is final. He is officially sentenced to 15 years in prison. Inside the prison, two inmates stand in a corner, whispering. They mention how the new guy keeps mumbling to himself. They advise each other to stay quiet and avoid conflict. One of them says he's heard the man is a creepy murderer. Meanwhile, Daikai continues to mumble, overwhelmed with confusion, questioning how he got caught in all of this. He insists to himself that he didn't do it. Some time passes. Daikai, now in prison uniform, is seen doing assigned chores. In his thoughts, he curses the professor for betraying him. He wonders what will happen to his mother now. Suddenly, a middle-aged man approaches Daikai with curiosity. He says he's been curious about Daikai for a while and had done some digging. He recounts the night when Daikai suddenly felt sleepy, and when he woke up, a naked woman lay dead beside him. He asks if that's how it really happened. Daikai, shocked, questions how this man knows so much. He asks him to explain everything and share the full story, admitting this situation is complicated. The man simply smiles creepily and says it's possible he could get Daikai out of the prison. He only wants the right answer in return. Inside the prison, the man curiously asked Daikai to share his story in detail. Depending on the circumstances, he hinted that he might be able to get Daikai out. Daikai was too shocked, wondering how this man knew so much about him. Thoughts rushed through his mind. Who was this person, and how did he know the details of his case? The man introduced himself as Kamishiro, revealing that he was also a prisoner. He claimed he too had been sentenced for a false charge. With a friendly smile, he extended his hand toward Daikai and said it was nice to meet him. Daikai stared at him suspiciously. Everything felt too strange. He warned Kamishiro that if the guards caught them talking, there would be consequences. But Kamishiro casually replied that they had plenty of time in prison and Daichi could talk whenever he felt like it. Before walking away, Kamishiro gave a creepy smile and warned him to be careful of that lawyer. This shocked Daichi once again, as Kamishiro smiled while looking back at him. Later that night, the prisoners were seen sleeping on the cold floor. Daichi, however, couldn't sleep. The conversation with Kamishiro kept replaying in his head. He kept wondering why he had to be cautious of Jogasaki. What did it mean? How did Kamishiro know all this? Even that so-called god seemed to know something. But what exactly did he know? Daikai's thoughts then shifted to his mother and his girlfriend, Meru. He wondered how they were doing now. They must be worried about him. Suddenly, the scene shifted. Blood splattered across the walls and ground. A muscular, dangerous-looking man held a severely beaten inmate in his hand. The inmate begged to be released, but it was no. The muscular man mocked him, calling him a newbie and questioning his earlier bravado. Behind him, several men lay on the ground, badly hurt. 2 terrified men stood frozen, watching the chaos. Another stood leaning against the wall, while one more beaten man was thrown aside by the muscular brute. He called the others too weak. The man leaning against the wall then approached and informed the muscular one about another newcomer. This enraged the brute, who punched a wall, cracking it. He demanded the new inmate be brought to the courtyard tomorrow. He wanted to meet him personally. The next morning, prisoners were doing exercises in the prison yard. Daichi struggled with pull-ups. His body shook until he finally dropped to the ground, exhausted, saying he couldn't go beyond 3. Suddenly, someone called out to him from behind and asked for help moving equipment. Daichi followed the man without hesitation. Kamashiro, sitting nearby, quietly watched him go. Daikai was led to a corner of the yard where no guards were present. The area was filled with threatening inmates. Among them stood the muscular broom from before, Ruja Bama, the gang boss. Bama gave Daikai a creepy smile, while other gang members stood behind him, blocking Daichi's escape. Daikai nervously asked what they were doing. Bama stepped forward, grabbed him by the neck, and accused him of choking a woman. Daikai struggled in pain, trying to explain it was a false charge, but Bama dismissed it, saying everyone claims that. Without warning, Bama punched Daikai in the stomach, dropping him to the ground. He then kicked Daikai in the head, leaving him groaning in pain. Bama coldly said he was a bad guy too, and people like Daikai made him want to kill. He raised his hand again and slammed a punch into Daichi's face. One of the inmates watching the scene whispered that Bamba was terrifying when angry and wondered if Daikai might die. Bamba mocked Daikai, expressing pity for his parents. With blood in his eyes, Daikai weakly asked what he was talking about. Another gang member added that rumors outside claimed the criminal's mother had died from shock. This news hit Daikai hard. His eyes widened, now bloodshot. Memories of his mother filled his mind. He recalled the happy moments they shared and whispered in regret. What had he done? He thought back to when Sayaka had called him to the hotel. He had gone just to meet her. Now, all that remained was guilt. He had admitted to a crime he didn't commit, just to be with his mother. The verdict echoed in his head, 15 years of imprisonment. Suddenly, Daikai began to smile, a twisted, eerie smile. Everyone around, including Bambo, was stunned. They couldn't understand what was happening. With trembling strength, Daikai rose to his feet, muttering that he no longer cared. Everything had become meaningless. His heart was now drowning in a single overpowering emotion, a pitch-black, dark feeling. Onlookers were horrified. Daikai grabbed Bamba's shirt, leaving everyone in shock. Even Bamba froze. Daikai laughed maniacally and then with full force punched Bamba square in the face. In a haunting dream, Daikai saw his mother walking away into darkness. He ran behind her, crying out for her to stop, his voice filled with pain, but she never turned back. Suddenly, his eyes opened in the hospital room. As Daikai regained awareness, he realized he was in the infirmary. His body ached all over and was covered in bandages. The pain was intense. Then he noticed a middle-aged man sitting on the bed beside him, calmly reading a book and smiling. Daikai recognized the man. He was the same Jindai from before. The man commented on Daichi's punch to the guard, and only then did Daikai remember what had happened. He had struck Luigi with full force before collapsing. Helpers had rushed him to the hospital, where he now lay recovering. Jindai informed him that Luigi had been placed in solitary confinement. He was now isolated in a dark room, banned from speaking or meeting anyone. Luigi had caused enough chaos. Was known for bullying and beating up new inmates until they were unconscious or severely injured. The doctor mentioned that it was fortunate that the regular checkup day had arrived as Daichi's injuries were severe. Jindai joked that he had also gotten injured at the same time, calling them injury buddies. Calmly, he added that they were also wrongful conviction buddies. Daichi had been falsely accused of murder, and Jindai had been framed for another crime. Daichi recalled Jindai's words from the canteen, that they were both innocent and wrongly accused. Daichi asked if Jindai truly believed in his innocence. No one else ever had. Jindai responded that Daichi didn't look like someone capable of killing a woman. He looked kind. Then he revealed that Daichi's assigned lawyer had betrayed him, framing him for rape and murder. Daichi couldn't understand why. He wasn't even their enemy. He didn't drink or smoke, let alone commit a crime. Just then, another man entered the room and called Jindai by name. Jindai told Daikai he'd explain everything once he had recovered. But before leaving, he warned that to gain something, Daikai would have to be prepared to give up just as much. Daikai wondered what he could possibly grasp if he had to give up everything. His aura grew heavy with desperation. The man who had come for Jindai noticed this change and commented on how unusual it was for Jindai to take an interest in someone. Jindai responded that he had felt chills when he saw Taichi's aura. He saw true potential in him. A few days later, Daikai stood before Jindai, visibly changed. His expression was no longer the same. Jindai noticed this and asked if Daikai needed something. Daikai reminded him about his promise to help him get out. He wanted to know what exactly Jindai meant. Jindai calmly said he meant exactly what he had said. Daikai, nervous and anxious, asked if he was going to introduce him to a skilled lawyer. Jindai remained silent, playing with a ball. Daikai then questioned whether he was talking about an escape plan. Jindai stopped and said he couldn't share the details just yet, not until he was sure Taichi was serious. Taichi repeated his words back to him, affirming his seriousness. The atmosphere between them grew tense. Jindai suddenly asked what Taichi planned to do once he got out. The mood shifted, Jindai's aura turned intense. Daikai thought about his life. He had been expelled from university due to the incident. If his mother had truly passed away, he had nothing left to lose. Everything had fallen apart because of one incident. Someone had murdered a girl he knew and pinned the crime on him. He had fallen into their trap, and because of it, his mother had suffered. He swore that if he ever got out, he would find the real killer and take revenge with his own hands. His voice was full of fury and a thirst for justice. He had lost his mother, his girlfriend, and everything else. His mother had only him, and now she was gone. Jindai asked if Daikai was truly willing to give up everything for revenge. Daikai responded that he had nothing left to lose. Jindai admitted that he too had lost everything. Then he handed the ball he had been playing with to Daikai, a symbol of trust. He revealed that he still had hidden cryptocurrency. If Taichi could solve the puzzle to access it, Jindai would give him all his money. He said the cryptocurrency was worth 50 billion yen. Jindai believed in Taichi's potential and wanted to help him succeed and fulfill his revenge. After hearing the offer, the hero immediately responded that he couldn't accept it. But Mr. Jindai placed a hand on his shoulder, insisting there was no need to worry and that he must accept it. With a knowing smile, Jindai said he understood such a reaction was natural, since trusting someone was never easy. He acknowledged that Taichi's reaction was just like that of any normal person. While leaving, Jindai told him that if he ever changed his mind, the deal would remain valid. Before walking away, he left a hint. Something was waiting for Daikai in the far side corner of the prison library. He suggested there was an interesting book on the far right with a completely black spine, urging him to find and read it. Daikai listened carefully, but later found himself standing among others, lost in thought of a mysterious hint. He questioned internally whether such a thing really existed. The man beside him asked if he was close to Jindai, but Daikai denied it. The man warned him, saying Jindai was a con artist and advised him to stay away. Daikai reacted with surprise. The man whispered that it was only a rumor, but he had heard Jindai was involved in large-scale fraud, murder, and even had ties with the Yakuza. Disturbed by the claims, Daikai wondered if such people truly existed. Soon after, driven by curiosity, he arrived at the library. He noticed the place was completely empty. He recalled Jindai's directions, the shelf near the window, second from the top, far right. As he followed the instructions, he discovered the book. It had a black spine, and unlike the others, it had a cover. Looking around cautiously, he began to read the book right there. On the front page, it introduced a genius venture company president and billionaire, Mr. Jindai. Seeing this, Daikai was baffled, wondering why such a book existed in a place like this. Later that night, Taichi's eyes suddenly opened to find the same old man, Jindai, sitting right in front of him. His heart pounded at the eerie sight of Jindai, watching him with a serious, unsettling gaze. Trembling, Daikai asked how he had entered the cell. Sweat poured down his face from fear. Jindai hushed him, worried that others might wake up. He calmly revealed that he had asked the guards to let the others sleep and showed Daikai a sleeping pill. Daikai, still in shock, asked how he managed all this and who he really was. Jindai asked whether he had read the book. Daikai answered, recalling everything he had read. Kusu Jindai, the youngest person to take a company public, an unconventional venture manager arrested for a massive fraud case and involved in casino embezzlement. He had lost everything. Jindai confirmed it all. Then he reminded Daikai of his desire for revenge and asked again, was he willing to throw everything away for it? He extended his hand, inviting Daikai to join him. Daikai hesitated. He couldn't fully trust a man like Jindai, but the fact that he could sneak into his cell and speak this way showed he had power. Most importantly, Daikai realized he had nothing left to lose. Passion, rage, and hatred surged within him. If getting revenge on those who framed him meant doing anything, he was ready. At that moment, Daikai looked fierce and dangerous, fully determined. Seeing his resolve, Jindai gave him a mission. He had to approach a specific man inside the prison. That man was referred to as the prince of the prison. In a flashback, a horrific scene unfolded inside the prison. Someone was crying in pain after being played, blood dripping from his body. Other prisoners stood at a distance, too terrified to help, fearing the same fate. The source of their fear remained calm amidst the chaos, questioning the fuss, stating such things were normal for him. He demanded others to comply with his desires. In the present, Jindai told Daikai that this man was very special. He held something crucial that they would need in the future. Now Taichi's new mission was to get close to the so-called prince of the prison. Outside the prison, a violent brawl breaks out. One prisoner, furious, lashes out at the others, enraged that they dare to underestimate him. He charges forward, throwing a heavy punch. The man he attacks only laughs, mocking him for being a freak. The muscular prisoner lifts his opponent with ease and slams him to the ground. His overwhelming strength is evident as he stands tall, radiating power. With a cold glare, he declares that no matter how many times someone comes at him, the result will be the same. His victim lies motionless on the ground, completely defeated. With a strange smile, the muscular man remarks that these people just aren't his type. His name is revealed, Kazuki Oga, an inmate. He flexes his body and comments that today's workout was just right for him. Nearby, the old man appears and comments on Oga's strength. Oga, seeing the old man, beams with pride and addresses him as President Jindai. Embarrassed, he waves off a compliment with a flex, but suddenly notices a new face. Curious, he asks the president about this boy. President Jindai introduces the newcomer as Daikai Enomoto. Daikai greets them politely, but behind his calm demeanor, his eyes burn with intensity, locked in a cold death stare. Oga, however, is unaffected. He cheerfully steps forward, thrilled to meet someone new, and attempts to embrace Daichi, sensing something different about him. Jindai then tells Oga he has a favorite ask. In a serious tone, he brings up the subject of a mysterious substance, its sources, and how it's being acquired. Oga immediately withdraws his cheerful attitude and replies that if it's about that topic, he's not the one to talk to. He turns away, telling Daikai they'll speak again another time. Daikai turns to the president and asks about Oga's identity. Jindai tells him that Kazuki Oga was once a detective. Shocked, Daikai questions why a former detective would be in prison. Jindai explains that Oga, though capable in his role, had deep flaws. He trained heavily, got into fights, and mingled with gangsters and semi-criminal groups for information. Eventually, he tried to settle old scores from his past and ended up on the losing side. He had attempted revenge in the outside world only to face a brutal counterattack. Daikai then asks about the word ice they've been mentioning. Jindai explains that it's a synthetic drug, a dangerous mix of methamphetamine, morphine, and other substances. It's called Heaven's Ice. Hearing this, Daikai's expression changes, haunted by memories of his past. Jindai reveals that during the murder case Daikai was involved in, traces of Heaven's Ice were found in the victim's body. Daichi, in disbelief, asks about the source of this information. Jindai tells him that for now, it must remain a secret. The weight of this revelation sinks deep into Daichi's heart. Thoughts of his girlfriend resurface, filling him with grief and determination. Fueled by anger, Daichi decides to accept the mission. His first task, get close to Kazuki Oga. Jindai adjusts his glasses and confirms the objective. By getting close to Oga, they could uncover vital information about Heaven's Ice and unravel the mystery behind Daichi's case. He must use any means necessary. Daikai begins to wonder how he'll earn Oga's trust. As Jindai walks away, he tells Daikai that if things go well, he'll share everything about Daikai's case and why he himself is in this place. With a fierce glare, Daikai promises himself he will complete this mission no matter what. The scene then shifts to a canal area, where Kazuki Oga strolls calmly. His expressions change as he admires his face and grooms his beard, seemingly enjoying himself. Just then, Daichi approaches to bathe nearby. Looking straight at Oga, Daichi speaks in a serious, cold tone. He tells him he has a favorite ask and promises a proper reward if he believes and listens. Olga, sweating nervously, is caught off guard. His lips tremble as he mutters about how bold young people have become. But then with sudden excitement, he perks up. He feels like he's hit the jackpot and becomes filled with enthusiasm. The detective looked at him with lustful eyes, curious about the request Daikai wanted to make. But before anything else could happen, a policeman interrupted, scolding them for violating prison conduct and reminding them that such behavior wasn't allowed. Daikai got up, ready to leave, and told the detective they continue this conversation later. As Daikai stood up, he was completely unclothed, standing boldly in front of the detective. The man's jaw dropped, eyes popping wide open as he stared directly at Daichi's things. He began to panic, calling it illegal and labeling it as torture, questioning how anyone could expose themselves like that in a place like this. Embarrassment flushed his face, turning him red and pale. Despite the shock, he found himself thinking that Daki looked innocent and cute, but then his mind spiraled further into confusion. His eyes fixated below, he wondered in disbelief where had Daki been hiding something so enormous. His inner thoughts spun wildly, making inappropriate and exaggerated comments about the hero's body. Daya, listening from a distance, heard all of this but kept quiet. Daikai then told the detective to close his eyes for a bit, but the man turned away flustered, asking what Daikai was planning to do in a place like this. He grew paranoid, thinking Daikai might do something unexpected, and imagined ridiculous scenarios about being kissed or seduced. His imagination spiraled further. He wondered if Daikai liked him from the start. Was this love at first sight? He fantasized about a kiss leading them both to solitary confinement, which he oddly considered romantic. In his head, he even imagined Daikai as a charming, assertive figure himself as someone who might play along with the idea. He expressed a preference for queen-like girls, but thought maybe he could handle a little chaos. Just as he leaned into his own fantasy, Daichi's sharp voice broke the illusion, calling his name and snapping him back to reality. Daikai was now clothed, a cloth wrapped around his body. The detective jumped out of the water, connecting everything to President Jindai's influence. He accused the rich of manipulating not only prisoners, but guards as well. A twisted smile formed on his face as his thoughts darkened. Daikai, however, remained serious, directly asking for information about Heaven's Ice. He made it clear he wasn't asking out of curiosity. Someone had died, and he needed answers. He pleaded with intensity, revealing that the drug might have been responsible for a girl's death in the case he was involved in. He begged for any clue about the seller or the clients involved. Desperation showed in his voice. He had to escape prison, not for himself, but for his mother and his late girlfriend. But the detective just laughed, hinting that he might reject the request. That response pushed Daikai over the edge. Blood boiled in Daichi's veins. He struck swiftly, pressing a blade against the man's neck, threatening him with the illusion of a shaving accident, one that could cost him his life. He emphasized that this would just be another unrecorded incident in prison. The detective, amused rather than scared, called him princess and wondered aloud who had taught him such boldness. Even with a blade to his throat, the man remained relaxed. But Daikai didn't flinch. He insisted that he didn't want violence. He only wanted information. If the man talked, there'd be no need for threats. Before he could finish, the detective struck first, flipping Daikai to the ground with a sudden move. He climbed on top, laughing maniacally, telling Daikai not to toy with his pure adult heart. Daikai tried to resist, but the man's obsession grew worse. He noticed a mole on Daichi's neck and commented with eerie excitement. Then, pushing boundaries, he leaned closer. But the next moment, Daikai struck hard. His knee crashed into the detective's groin, causing him to curdle up and scream in pain, holding himself tightly. The strike was fierce and precise, a devastating hit to the most vulnerable spot. Despite the pain, the man tried to brush it off, joking that Daki hadn't even used full strength. But Daki wasn't amused. His eyes turned deadly as he radiated pure killing intent. He had no personal grudge, but he had made up his mind. He would do anything to get revenge. The detective saw that spark in his eyes and called him a sheltered brat. Yet he admired Daichi's intense gaze. Excited by the danger, he admitted he was starting to like Daikai more and more, but Daikai didn't waver. Hatred burned in his eyes, bloodlust radiated from his presence, and nothing could stop him now. Outside the prison, an old man waited, eager to witness the outcome of the clash between Daikai and the big man. But the guards, seeing Mr. Jindai standing nearby, panicked. He urged him to leave quickly, fearing he might lose his job if caught. The guards, sweating with anxiety, tried to move things along, but Jindai calmly responded. He had promised to buy 5 minutes and assured the guard that even if he lost his job, a hefty sum awaited him. Hearing this, the frightened guard reluctantly stood by, holding the door in place. Behind that door, a tense scene unfolded. Daiji and the large man stood face to face, ready for battle. Daiji tried once more to reason with him, requesting information about the drug Heaven's Ice. The drug had already taken a life close to him. But Oga, the big man, didn't budge. He made it clear that information came with a price. His eyes were filled with twisted desire, his intentions clear. But Daiji didn't back down. His grip on his blade tightened, his serious glared enough to make the man hesitate. Daiji revealed his intent to escape the prison, seek revenge on the one who framed him, and was even willing to repay the favor in any way he could. Whatever was within his power, he would offer in return for help. The big man responded mockingly, recalling the rumor that Daiji was in for 15 years for murder. He assumed Daiji had fallen for the promises of the president. He scoffed, liking it to someone relying on lottery winnings to repay debt. Infuriated, Daiji dismissed him as someone headed for ruin. Then in a sudden intense move, he cut his own wrist with his blade, swearing on his own blood. His cold and focused expression stunned the big man. Seeing him like that, the man became captivated by Daiji's resolve. Looking into Daiji's dark eyes, he admired how powerful and alluring he looked even in anger. Moved by this intensity, he grabbed Daiji's wrist, licked his lips, and pledged his support. However, the moment turned grotesque. The man began to lick Daiji's blood in a twisted manner, leaving Daiji shocked and disgusted. As he walked away, the big man admitted that the incident tied to the drug was dangerous and unsettling. He began to recall his memories, showing off scars from being stabbed during an undercover mission at a club called Paradiso in Roppongi. Daiji immediately recognized the dealer connecting him to the very drug. Heaven's ice. He was chasing. The club, the man confirmed, likely still existed, and Daiji should get someone he trusts to investigate it. Excited and grateful for this breakthrough, Daiji thanked him sincerely. But before the strange alliance could blossom, a guard barged in shouting at them. The guards pinned both of them to the ground and demanded answers. They questioned how the two stayed behind in the bath and who was responsible. As the guards restrained them, the prince smirked at Daiji, promising they'd meet again. The scene cut to a dark grim room where Daiji and others were now brutally tied up. A cruel officer declared that Daiji would spend 2 weeks in solitary to reflect. He threw food on the floor, commanding him to eat there as well. Daiji, though broken, reminded himself that 2 weeks was nothing compared to 15 years. With so much on his mind, he endured the harsh punishment, eating from the ground without losing his resolve. He vowed to survive even if he had to crawl on the ground as long as revenge was possible. 2 weeks later, the punishment ended. The guards warned against any further misbehavior. Daiji then met Mr. Jindai and expressed his expectation of an earlier release solitary. But Jindai reminded him he wasn't the king of the prison. Many guards, including the strict warden, were beyond his influence. Getting them into the same cell had been the best he could do. Daiji, still focused, mentioned thinking deeply during his isolation about his case and about Jindai. He demanded to know how Jindai planned to help him get out. Without that, he wouldn't share the information about the drug he got from Oga. Jindai smiled, suggesting Daiji Ori had a good idea who framed him. Daiji admitted he wasn't completely sure, but suspected his treacherous friend and a certain professor. These two may have orchestrated the trap that ruined his life. Jindai confirmed the hunch, stating the enemy was indeed powerful. Simply escaping wouldn't be enough for revenge. He then removed his glasses, giving Daiji a cool and serious look, and promised to give him the weapons he needed to achieve his revenge. Daiji looked at him, filled with a mix of shock and determination, realizing that something powerful was about to come his way. After listening to Mr. Jindai, Daichi asks which weapon he's talking about. He wonders if Jindai means his cryptocurrency, the one he had invested heavily in and considered his secret weapon. What matters now is what happened that night, and he wants Daiji to explain everything in detail once again. Daiji begins narrating the incident that changed his life. Mr. Jindai helps him piece together the events, repeating them as confirmation. That night, after finishing his shift at the bar, Daichi was called by the victim to a hotel. There, he was drugged by a male friend from his part-time job. One of his treacherous friends gave him a drink, and after that, he lost consciousness. The next morning, he woke up to find the waiter's dead body lying in front of him. Mr. Jindai asks him if this version of events is accurate. At that moment, Daichi suddenly remembers that someone had handed him an energy drink. He blames himself, wondering why he didn't suspect anything then. That drink could have been the reason behind everything that happened. Jindai tells him that it's good he's finally realizing the truth. His unconscious body was discovered at the scene, and the victim's naked corpse was lying there in a terrible state. The police arrived immediately and arrested him without even asking questions. Jindai highlights how perfectly timed their arrival was, hinting that it couldn't have been a coincidence. Daikai then recalls meeting Professor Jogasaki, who became his lawyer. The professor advised him to admit guilt in exchange for a suspended sentence. Jindai connects the dots and tells Daikai that the same man guided him to accept guilt. His lawyer, Jogasaki, and a man named Jiyu, both were part of the trap. Jindai then asks if Daichi knows who connects those two men. That's when Daichi remembers President Takura, the one who had introduced the lawyer at the bar. Takura was wealthy and obsessed with women. As everything starts making sense, Tishi angrily shouts that President Takara was the one who killed Sayaka. He realizes that Takara bribed both the lawyer and Gu to pin the murder on him. Tendai admits that he doesn't know every detail, but is certain of one thing. Those three men framed Daikai, and because of them, Tendai himself was sentenced to 15 years for a crime he didn't commit. Hearing this, Tendai is filled with rage. He becomes so emotional that his forehead starts bleeding, but Jindai calms him down and advises him not to act rashly. He tells him there's still hope, the sweet hope of revenge. Then to test his resolve, Jindai demands 15 billion rupees from Daichi. He says once Daichi can get that kind of money, he'll drag all of them into hell. His killing aura makes it clear that he means every word. Jindai then reminds him again not to rush. Getting him out of prison would take time and careful planning. It could take 1 or 2 years. Even if Jindai handed over a large sum of money right now, it would be useless if Daichi didn't know how to use it. He asks what the most important thing for Daichi is at this moment. Then with a sharp look, he answers his own question, knowledge. He shows Daichi a book and seeing it, Daichi feels a faint glimmer of hope. Jindai explains that until the time comes to leave prison, he will pass all his knowledge on to Daichi. From that day on, Jindai's prison school begins. Jindai stands in front of the library preparing to teach the basics of economics. He looks at the books with excitement and starts reading them like a true teacher. He tells Daichi not to worry about understanding everything at once. Speed is what matters in the beginning. First, learn how to read a book, scan the table of contents, and then go through it quickly. Daichi stares at the books with determination. He promises himself to absorb all the knowledge in front of him. From that moment, day and night, Daichi begins studying relentlessly. Alongside his academic efforts, he also works out intensely, building both his mind and body. He studies business and marketing terms, pushing himself beyond his limits. Eventually, he collapses from exhaustion, overwhelmed by the effort he's putting in. Later, during another session, Jindai asks him what he's been doing. Daichi replies that he's memoizing company information as instructed. He says there are around 4,000 listed companies and just memoizing them would take a lifetime. He needs to do more. Jindai laughs, so surprised that Daichi reads quarterly reports while doing push-ups. Daichi explains that ever since he was punched by Bamba and had that fight with Ogre, he realized something important. Without physical strength, knowledge is useless. Strength is necessary to make use of what one knows. Jindai smiles, clearly impressed. He tells Daichi that he has exceeded his expectations. He understands what it takes to survive in this world. Now that Daichi has mastered the basics of economics, it's time for the next lesson. Jindai points at him and says he will now teach him how to control people with his words, how to make others follow him. It's time for Daichi to learn the art of manipulation. After some time, the scene shifts to the day of the next stop. Daichi is seen walking towards someone outside the prison. He greets the person and asks what he's doing there. The person turns out to be a small boy who quickly covers himself more, clearly frightened by the sudden approach. The poor boy is visibly nervous as Daichi walks up confidently. Daichi politely asks if he can sit next to him. The boy doesn't say much, but before he can respond, Daichi sits down beside him with a friendly smile. Introducing himself, he says his name is Enomoto Daichi and confirms that the boy is Tako-san. The moment he hears his name, the boy begins to tremble. He clutches his hoodie tightly and nervously wonders how Daichi knew his name. Daikai calmly explains that he overheard the guards talking nearby and that's how he found out. Still uneasy, the boy says his name often sounds strange to people and asks not to be judged for it. He confesses he gets teased a lot and isn't good at talking. Despite this, Daikai responds with a smile, assuring him that his name is nice. Encouraged, Daikai tries to continue the conversation and gently asks Tako-san to tell him more about himself. Tako, with tears in his eyes, reveals he was convicted of stock price manipulation and is now serving his sentence. He admits he's not good with the people and doesn't have anyone to talk to. He keeps speaking, cutely expressing how alone he feels. Hearing this, Daiki kindly offers his friendship. He suggests that since they seem to be about the same age, it might be nice to be friends. Tako listens, surprised and unsure, as their conversation continues. The scene then shifts to Mr. Jindai, who is eating and comments that Daiksu looks much better now than before. Daiksu reflects on Jindai's earlier advice, listen 70% of the time, talk 30%, maintain eye contact, and offer praise. He says he followed this approach when talking to Tako, and they became friends immediately. Shinda acknowledges it's rare for things to go that smoothly and credits Daichi's personality. Daikai then shares his thoughts about Tako, saying he seems like a good person who knows a lot about stocks. Jindai suggests inviting him to join them next time they study stock picks. Curious, Daikai asks if Tako is a well-known figure. Jindai confirms that Tako is quite famous in the industry. He adds that achieving goals alone is difficult and allies are essential. To gain allies, one needs the power to charm others, and Daikai has that talent. Jindai believes this talent will help Daikai go far and Daikai responds with hope. Then, a question crosses Daichi's mind. He asks why Shinda is being so kind to him. Shinda turns the question back to him. Daikai guesses that Shinda must need collaborators for his prison break plan and is trying to recruit him. Shinda acknowledges the reasoning, but doesn't deny or confirm it. Before he can explain further, Daikai, now serious, declares that he's already decided to sell his soul to the devil. His eyes are intense with anger. He says if Jindai is seeking revenge, he's ready to help him with anything. Jindai places a hand on his shoulder to calm him. He promises to share everything once Daikai graduates from his school. After that, Daikai keeps learning from Jindai. Tako begins explaining stock trends, pointing out a company whose stock price might rise. Jindai comments that the company is family-run and has internal conflict. Daikai suggests a competitor and asks for feedback on their stock. Impressed, Jindai says Daikai has an eye for good companies and notes the competitor is actively investing in equipment. Even at night, the learning continues. Zinda explains patterns in politicians' behavior. He trains Daichi thoroughly like a professor. During exercise time, Jindai encourages him to learn English too. Though Gachi isn't fond of learning languages in prison, Jindai tells him to start by expanding his vocabulary. Daichi trains his body with great intensity. He does push-ups with full force, pushing his limits. Gradually, he becomes stronger. Zinda continues teaching him everything: politics, business, and life knowledge. After much effort, Daikai is seen doing push-ups with one hand while reading a book, looking confident and cool. Seeing this, Taiko is stunned. Words slip from his mouth, admitting that Daikai has grown much bigger. He says Daikai looks strong now without even realizing it. Daichi's six-pack abs are clearly visible, a result of his hard work. He then asks what Taiko thinks of him now compared to before, having grown so much. Then we see the prisoners working out and running in the yard. Among them, Daikai Enomoto is seen talking to Mr. Jinda, who is sitting calmly on the ground. Daikai mentions something about a girl, prompting Mr. Jinda to respond. He explains that having a girl's support makes fighting feel more adventurous. Mr. Jinda then looks at Daikai, and Daikai admits that he once had a girlfriend. He pauses as memories of his past love resurface. Mr. Jinda, observing him, suggests that Daikai isn't unattractive and just needs to be more assertive with women. He illustrates a scenario sharing a drink with a woman, whispering something to her, and leans closer to Daikai, making him uncomfortable. Jindai whispers something into Daikai's ear, and Daikai asks if that would really work. Jindai assures him that once he gets out of prison, he should try it, and he will become a ladies' man. He adds that Daikai is devoted to his mother after all. Daikai questions the relevance, but Jindai continues with a strange thought. What if Daikai time-traveled and ended up on a date with his young mother? How would he treat her then? Daikai is left thinking deeply. He remembers how much his mother loved and cared for him. A flashback shows her hearing the media spread false news about him, which led to her passing away from the shock. The memory hits Daikai hard, and his emotions overwhelm him. Mr. Jinda moves closer, offering comfort. He praises Daikai's mother, saying she must have been a good woman. A person is shaped by both their birth and how they are raised, a combination of nature and nurture. Daikai quietly reflects on his childhood, his mother's love, and admits he doesn't fully understand himself. Jindai looks up the sky, claiming there must be an afterlife beyond it. He encourages Daikai to visit his mother's grave once he's free. Daikai's eyes fill with tears as he silently thanks his mother. A vision appears of her, smiling down at him from the sky. Jindai tells him to stop crying, and the scene transitions to the next day. Daichi is shown doing intense workouts, pulling his leg over a bar. Jindai praises his effort. After finishing, Daichi approaches Jindai, who points out a slim, handsome boy nearby. Jindai identifies the boy as Mr. Haruki, a host who used to be a farmer. He tells Daikai that Haruki might be an important ally during his future plans, and advises him to observe Haruki carefully when the time comes. Daikai seems deep in thought when suddenly a prison guard arrives. The guard announces that prisoner number 1034 has a visitor. Both Daikai and Jindai are surprised. Daikai wonders who could be visiting him. The scene shifts to the cafeteria where Daikai arrives to meet the visitor. A man introduces himself as Yamashita from the Investigation Division 2 of the Metropolitan Police Department. Daikai acknowledges him and sits down. Yamashita lights a cigarette, and Daikai allows it. Yamashita clarifies that this is not about Daichi's case, but about Kosuke Jinda. He asks if Daikai was close to him. Daikai explains they shared the same cell, which led to frequent conversations. Yamashita reveals that Kosuke Jinda wasn't just arrested for murder. He'd also committed a massive financial crime. Authorities believe he's hiding a fortune, about 50 billion yen in cryptocurrency. Daichi listens carefully as Yamashita gets to the point. They want Daikai to find out the truth. Yamashita offers a deal, hinting at a reward through his junior at the Ministry of Justice. He proposes that Daikai cooperate, promising benefits in return. Daikai questions the offer, and Yamashita exhales cigarette smoke, leaving the thought hanging. As Daikai reflects, Yamashita coldly remarks that someone like Daikai doesn't belong in prison. He places a hand on Daichi's shoulder, smiles slyly, and tells him to live smart. Daikai quietly thinks, then asks if Yamashita believes in the afterlife. Yamashita questions if this is about religion. Daichi explains that Mr. Jinda once spoke about an afterlife. He recalls Jinda's words about his mother waiting for him in the next world. Daichi realizes that someone as rational as Jinda lied only to encourage him. Moved by this, Daichi stands up, shocking the officers. He firmly declares that he cannot betray someone like Jinda. Yamashita scowls and warns Daichi that he'll regret this decision. Daichi, unshaken, says Yamashita will be the one to regret it. Officers take Daichi back to his cell. As he walks away, Daikai vows never to trust the authorities again. The scene shifts again to a luxurious room where a man pours a drink, Domaine de la Romani Conti 1995. Two men sit on a couch enjoying the moment. One man mentions Takura and the other responds, recalling Daikai Inamoto. He says that thanks to Daichi's actions, he now lives a comfortable life. The mood changes when the first man mentions that Daikai has gotten close to Kusu Jindai prison. Shocked, the second man reacts strongly. With a dark expression, he says that it would be better if Daikai Inamoto simply disappeared. Inamoto Daikai had grown closer to Jindai Kasok in prison. Later, two individuals were seen talking. One mentioned Jindai Kosok and the other listened carefully. The first man confidently stated that the kids wouldn't be able to do anything and doubted whether those two could accomplish anything either. He'd assure that the teacher would handle everything, so there was no need to worry. Reflecting on Jindai's 15-year sentence, he mentioned that he would eventually be released. If something were to happen then, they needed to be prepared in advance. Taking action beforehand was the best option. He then pulled out his phone, called someone, and introduced himself as Jogasake. He said he had a favor to ask. The scene then shifted back to the prison, where someone informed Daikai that he had received it at the bar in Nishizabu. Daikai then revealed that he had been fired from his job. His friend was shocked, grabbed him, and shouted his name repeatedly. Everyone nearby turned to watch. Daikai remarked that they were two of a kind, both being his friends. His friend, taken aback, asked if that was true. He then stood up and said he was leaving. Daikai replied that they'd meet again sometime. The scene then showed a place where Jindai stood while Daikai approached him. Jindai asked how it went. Daikai said it went well, but that he couldn't read the man's thoughts properly. Looking at someone else, Daikai noted that the man's eyes no longer smiled. Jindai instructed Daikai to observe that man carefully from now on and trust in his own judgment. Daikai agreed after thinking it over. Jindai brought up Bamba, asking if Daikai remembered him. Daikai confirmed that he did. Jindai explained that Bamba was in solitary confinement after a scuffle with Daikai. The scene shifted to a prison cell where officers called out an inmate number. A well-built man emerged with impressive muscles. It was Bamba. The author clarified that Bamba was returning to the general prison population and wouldn't be isolated anymore. Jindai revealed that Bamba had a younger sister he deeply cared for. A few years ago, someone brutally attacked her, leaving her with severe injuries. She was still alive, hospitalized in critical condition. Daixi asked what he could do about it. Jindai turned the question back on him, making Daixi reflect on his potential. The next scene showed 4 inmates sitting on the floor of a room with Bamba reading a book. A jail officer entered, followed by a man whose presence was revealed to be Jindai. He greeted Bamba, who recognized him and noted that Jindai was still doing as he pleased. Jindai replied that he was just a prison boss with limited freedom. Bamba asked if Jindai had an order for him, seeing they were now in the same cell. Jindai leaned in and said there was something he wanted Bamba to hear, mentioning that he had been serving time for a while. Meanwhile, Daiki found his friend sitting on a table. Sitting beside him, Daiki listened as his friend mentioned he had to say something. He spoke about staying in prison for 10 years and having back pain. Daikai confirmed and mentioned that Jindai had told him Haruki would be a great medium for him to get out of prison. It was because of Haruki that Daikai had hoped for release. Daichi's friend questioned why Haruki would help him and what he would gain. He then excitedly talked about wanting to leave prison and enjoy time with women outside, claiming they were easy to manipulate and profitable. Daikai, disgusted, called his friend's words nonsense. The friend laughed eerily and accused Daikai of giving a dress to a girl before killing her and disposing of the body. At that moment, a strong man arrived. He grabbed Daichi's friend by the throat, choking him. The man was revealed to be Haruki. He asked if the friend felt pain and pointed out that innocent girls felt even worse pain when they were murdered. Daikai tried to intervene, but Haruki's angry gaze stopped him. His eyes were filled with rage. A bright white light followed. That night, a doctor exited a room. Jindai asked if everyone was alright. The doctor confirmed that Takahashi Haruki was critically injured with low vitals. He had suffered serious injuries. Jindai learned that Haruki had attacked the young host, and when Daikai intervened to protect him, he was also severely beaten. A flashback showed Haruki punishing both Daikai and his friend brutally. The doctor explained that limited resources made the surgery difficult, but they managed to save both of them with their skills. Jindai praised the doctor, calling him a great surgeon. As they walked together, the doctor mentioned it was his first time performing such a surgery. To encourage him, Jindai said he had expected it because the doctor had God's hands. Later, an officer entered Daichi's room and observed him sleeping on his bed. After confirming Daichi's identity, the officer injected something into his foreline. Smiling, the officer stood silently. The chapter ended there. As night turns into morning, the scene transitions to a quiet building, followed by the appearance of a girl walking purposefully somewhere. A boy soon appears, calling the girl by the name Iru, and she responds by calling him Gao. The boy is then revealed, handsome and fit, holding a concert ticket in his hand. He reminds Iru of her favorite singer and suggests taking a break to watch the concert together. Iru declines, saying she is busy and not in the right mood. She quietly admits that she's still waiting for someone. Tears begin to fall from her eyes as she expresses disbelief, insisting that Daikai could never commit murder. She struggles to accept the truth. Jiao, observing her sadness, gently says he isn't completely sure either, but someone informed him, and a lawyer also confirmed it. Iru, lost in thought, asks if there's any news about Daikai. Go replies that he heard Daikai suffer a heart attack, and his condition is critical. Hearing this, Iru becomes visibly distressed. Ga adds that Daikai died in jail, and the news breaks her. She collapses, unable to hold back her tears, crying loudly in grief. Ga tries to comfort her, saying Daikai was a good person and didn't deserve what happened. The scene then shifts to a prison, followed by a room where Jindai shares that Daikai had only tried to stop a fight, but got injured in the process. Daichi's friend, upon hearing this, begins to cry and slams his hand on a table, asking why this happened to him. Jindai, speaking in a sorrowful tone, says he still can't believe Daikai is gone. The scene transitions again to a room where Daichi's lifeless body lies. A doctor and an officer stand nearby. The officer remarks that it's a tragedy the boy died before being released. He recalls that Daikai had been beaten several times, but managed to survive. What happened afterward remains unknown. He states that Daikai died of a heart attack and says perhaps it's for the best, referring to Daikai as Animono Daikai. The doctor reflects silently, and the scene jumps to two men partying and drinking together. They clean glasses and drink. One man thanks the other for handling Animoto Daikai, mentioning how troublesome he was. He expresses his gratitude and calls the other man, Sir. The second man responds with a sinister smile, commenting that life's garden is big enough and Daikai was playing like a king in prison anyway. The first man reassures him that the case was closed early and promises to send a lot of money, mentioning the potential to earn through dance. The second man grins darkly, assuring him they already have everything and not to worry. The story shifts back to the prison, where a prisoner is being escorted out. The man thanks the officer. The officer tells him his matter isn't fully resolved and suggests staying a little longer. He advises the man not to overexpose himself. The prisoner, Daikai, replies that there's no need to worry and he will take good care of himself. As Daikai leaves, he takes one last look at the prison gate and then gazes up at the sun, its light reflecting in his eyes. He quietly acknowledges that he's finally out. Soon after, DC is seen picking flowers and walking toward a graveyard. He stops at a grave, sits, and expresses regret for taking so long, apologizing. His eyes are bandaged, and he slowly removes the bandages. Though his face has changed, he feels like the same person he always was. As the blindfold flies away, the full grave is revealed. It belongs to the Fukumoto family. Daikai looks at it and calls out Mom. The scene flashes back to the night Daichi's death was faked. Inside a hospital room, Jindai tells Daikai to pretend he's dead. Confused, Daikai asks why, and Jindai explains it means he must abandon his life as Edamoto Daikai. A doctor steps in, explaining that they will completely reconstruct Daichi's face, making him unrecognizable. He shows Daikai the face of another man, saying he will assume that man's identity. Daikai hesitates, saying it doesn't feel right. Jindai insists that the man is already a criminal, so there's no issue. Daikai pauses then agrees. The operation begins and in the operating room, Daichi's face is removed and placed aside. The other man's face is also removed. The doctor carefully attaches the new face to Daichi and begins stitching. Daichi is now reborn as Takahashi Haruki. His new face looks sharp and composed. Standing by his mother's grave, he vows revenge on those responsible for her death. With a firm grip on his mother's band, he begins walking forward. His expression turns dark and determined, signaling the beginning of his revenge. Then the scene opens in a building at night where Daichi enters a bathroom and takes a shower, feeling the water flow freely without any restrictions. After finishing, he turns off the tap and stares at his reflection in the mirror, noting that the surgical scars will fade in a few days. He reflects deeply, declaring to himself that from this moment on, he is no longer Enomoto Daichi. He is Haruki now, because he carries Haruki's face. The scene shifts to a hospital. The doctor informs Daichi that Haruki is no longer alive. The doctor explains that Haruki died of a heart attack unrelated to the surgery. Though his condition was stable post-operation, he passed away due to medication-induced sleep, implying someone may have killed him. Jindai processes the information silently. Daikai asks who could have done it, and the answer suggests the killer may have had a grudge against Bamba. But Jindai believes the attacker intended to kill Daikai and mistakenly targeted Bamba, thinking he was Daikai. Daikai is shaken by the realization that Bamba died because they switched places. It becomes clear to him that someone deliberately came to kill him. The doctor insists that they had no prior knowledge of such danger and would have acted differently if they had. Jindai comments that perhaps this is karma catching up with them and warns that a hellish path lies ahead. The doctor informs them that there is no longer a need to swap faces with Haruki since Haruki is already dead. Daikai asks what will happen next, and Jindai tells him that he must now take Haruki's place and leave prison. His revenge begins from this moment. Jindai reminds him of the 2 years of preparation that have led to this day. Daikai reflects silently, then enters a room to collect Haruki's belongings. Inside, he finds a credit card, some cash, a phone, and a house key. Daikai realizes Haruki must have brought all this from prison and feels there's no point in lingering here. He stares at his new face reflected on the phone screen and recalls a disturbing memory of someone claiming that getting women hooked on drugs and turning him into puppets was profitable, especially when sold into saplings. Motivated by rage, he starts his usual workout, thinking that if he had died that day, he would have been defeated too easily. He asked his enemies to wait for him. After closing his eyes for a moment, he opens them with fire in his gaze, declaring he will completely destroy his enemies. Morning arrives. Daikai visits Grand Hotel Tokyo, dressed in a suit and boots, ready to meet someone important. He checks his watch and sits at a table, thinking about what Jindai instructed him to do upon release, including a scheduled meeting. A man approaches and asks if Daikai is the president's apprentice. Daikai confirms and is asked for a password, to which he responds with wait, reflect, and hope. The man introduces himself as Satu. Daikai remains silent for a moment. Satu continues explaining that Jindai had helped him in the past despite being surrounded by enemies, though he had a few loyal allies. He then hands Daikai a Japanese passport. Daikai is stunned to see the name Kurosu Fudo printed on it, his new identity. Before leaving, Satu encourages him to do his best. Daikai thanks him. Opening the bag Sato provided, he finds a mobile phone and a large amount of cash. He recalls Jindai's instructions to gradually convert cryptocurrency into real money, and how Jindai promised to teach him how. Dashi had asked Jindai why he was going to such lengths for his revenge, and what he was expected to give in return. Had smiled and said that his true goal lies beyond revenge. Daiichi had silently looked at him with respect, and now in the present, he quietly thanks Daiichi again. The next scene unfolds in the airport at night. Daiichi, now known as Kurosu Fuyudo, is dressed in a suit and boots preparing to fly to Japan. A flight attendant hands him his ticket and wishes him a good journey, referring to him as Mr. Kurizu. Daiichi thanks her and boards the flight. As he takes his seat, a voice announces their departure and reminds passengers to fasten their seat belts. Daikai gazes out the window, deep in thought. He recalls that he has 3 targets for his revenge. He needs to uncover their current locations, relationships, and assets. He vows to investigate everything, especially incident from 2 years ago that led to Sayaka's murder and his own framing. Filled with rage, he swears to make them experience despair even more painful than what he endured. He knows what he needs now is funding and assistance. His first step will be going abroad to retrieve the cryptocurrency entrusted to him by Jindai. As the plane soars into the sky, Daikai reveals the amount, cryptocurrency worth 50 billion yen. After a gap of 3 years, the story shifts to Tokyo, where the city is booming with grand parties and massive casino developments. Money from all over the world is flooding into the city, attracting crowds day and night. This rapid economic expansion brings social change, creating a sharp divide between classes, lifestyles, opportunities, ultimately forming a society full of inequality and unrest. The scene transitions to an airplane flying high above the clouds. Inside the cabin, a tense and quiet atmosphere replaces the chaos of the city below. Daikai is seen speaking to a flight attendant nearby. He's informed they will soon arrive at Haneda Airport. He notes that he arrived earlier than expected, acknowledging his return to Japan after 3 years. Shortly after, the story shifts to Marunouchi, Tokyo. Inside an impressive building, Daikai is welcomed warmly. 2 staff members express gratitude for taking the time to meet them, showing him deep respect. Daikai, looking confident and charismatic, thanks them in return and introduces himself as Kurisu. One of the men quietly reflects on how surprisingly young Daikai is. Without wasting time, Daikai moves to business and says they should start the meeting. The discussion begins with the booming popularity of casino which is attracting wealthy individuals to Japan and driving the stock market up. The group had agreed to meet with Daikai based on strong recommendations from their American clients. However, after observing Daikai more closely, they find him to be different. He doesn't resemble the flashy nouveau rich they expected, and he appears far more grounded. They explain how they usually provide top-tier services only to exclusive clients, ensuring precision and discretion through dedicated account managers. As the conversation progresses, one of the men speaks politely, trying to hide his eagerness and offers a business proposal. A bit away, the second man whispers confidently that he'll charm Daikai and persuade him to deposit more. First aiming for 100 million, then pushing for 200 million yen. Promising utmost sincerity and commitment, they assured Daikai of their dedication. But Daichi surprises them by stating he'll begin with a deposit of 2 billion yen to test the partnership. The two men fall silent, clearly stunned, and quickly show him even more respect. Daichi, still smiling, requests one favor in return. He asks for detailed information about their company and its operations. They agree, and the deal is finalized. As Daikai begins to leave, one of the men stops him and invites him to a Michelin-starred restaurant that evening. Daikai politely declines, explaining that he already has plans for the night. The scene cuts to a different location, where a man's phone rings. A girl lies beside him, and suddenly he stabs her with a knife, causing her to fall to the floor. He taunts her, questioning how long she plans to keep lying around. The girl, confused and in pain, asks what he's doing. The man, arrogant and emotionless, brushes her off and tells her to disappear. He styles his hair casually and mutters that she's worthless. This man is revealed to be Jiyu Kudot, a former friend of Daikai and now a lounge owner. After insulting the girl, he arrogantly states that women like her always chase after him and she should leave. He coldly dismisses her, thinking to himself that she was just someone he picked up at a club last night. Later in the evening, he heads out again, ready to find someone new to exploit, humming to himself that it's time to make money once more. The scene shifts to a lavish location filled with beautiful women. One of them thanks Gu for visiting, smiling sweetly. Just as they continue chatting, the manager rushes in, announcing a new VIP customer. The manager shows the extravagant order placed by the VIP. It includes Belle Epoque Rosa and 2 bottles of almond silver. Seeing the luxury items, Hu gets excited. He sends his wealth and quickly prepares to charm this high-spending customer. Fixing his appearance, he confidently walks towards the VIP room. Upon entering, he approaches the guest with a fake respectful attitude and introduces himself as the lounge owner, Cadet. But the VIP guest turns out to be none other than Daikai, who now goes by the name Kurizu. Without hesitation, Daichi presents his business card, signaling that he's in control of the situation. Rewinding the clock, we are taken back to the pivotal moment when Daichi first crossed paths with Jiyu. Daichi was seated across from a man politely being questioned. The staff thanked him visiting and asked about his preferences regarding the girls. While others might have indulged, Desi declined every offer with calm composure. He explained that he had no interest in such distractions. Respecting his words, the waiter bowed and walked away. This place was now considered his castle. A man's voice echoed, apologizing for the wait. A beautiful girl appeared beside Daikai, smiling warmly. She introduced herself as Mizuki and expressed her happiness in meeting him, asking if she could sit beside him. Daikai welcomed her without hesitation, assuring her there was no problem. The girl smiled again, observed him closely, and then took her seat. The waiter approached for the menu and asked if they'd like to order a drink. Seeing Daikai, a VIP member, the girl grew excited. Sitting in front of such a rich and handsome man made her heart race. He wasn't just wealthy, he looked like someone who could easily spend a fortune for her. Daikai ordered the hotel's most expensive wine and even called for more girls to join. The mood turned into a lively party. Glasses clinked together as everyone raised a cheerful toast. Beautiful girls surrounded Daikai, admiring him. They thanked him for his generosity, praising how kind he was. Meanwhile, the waiters stood stunned. One whispered, shocked that this young man had just ordered items worth over 1 million yen. One girl, unable to contain herself, asked why someone so young and charming was also so highly rated. His nature had won her heart. She called him the youngest and most dashing owner she had ever seen. Daikai humbly told them there was no need for such praise. The girl responded proudly, explaining that unlike cabaret clubs, this place had no sales quota. They could also wear whatever they wanted. Another girl curiously asked Daikai what work he did. He answered briefly, companies, investments, and similar ventures. Observing his spending, she silently noted that someone throwing money around like this was surely hiding more underneath. Suddenly, Ku entered adjusting his coat. Daikai advised the girls to remain calm. The man greeted Daikai and hoped he wasn't interrupting. Introducing himself as Kaget, the owner of the establishment, he extended a hand. Daikai returned the greeting, introducing himself as Karisu, but with a sly, brat-like attitude. Jiyu couldn't help but chuckle with an evil grin. Daikai, smiling darkly, pulled out his black card and declared his identity again, trying to provoke Gu's memory. Jiyu looked around the lounge casually mentioning how Konna-chan had once drunk too much tequila and thrown up. Watching Gu's careless demeanor, Daikai silently confirmed that Jiyu hadn't recognized him at all. He then politely asked to leave, hoping Daikai would visit again. Daikai responded calmly, but with hidden meaning, confirming they would meet again. Internally, Jiyu entertained dark thoughts, plotting to squeeze dry, planning to rob him slowly and effectively. Meanwhile, Daichi's true feelings surged inside him. Every moment they had lost, every memory they couldn't share, you got to reclaim everything, even if it meant pain. A dangerous killing intent filled Daichi's aura. His eyes turned cold. He had made up his mind. He would destroy Gu. A girl nearby sensed his shift, but misunderstood it as drunken behavior, unsure of what was going through his mind. The scene shifted to a quiet room where a girl stood in front of a mirror, mumbling about a strange price hike. Someone was manipulating the market. At that moment, the door opened. Daikai stepped in and greeted her casually, commenting on her hat and handing her something. He insisted she try it. He noted that she wore the same hat when she got out on parole. This girl was Tako. After her surgery, she had been shocked upon seeing Daikai. He looked completely different, unrecognizable. Daikai sat with her, his expression serious. He requested her help with his revenge. He needed her unmatched skills and even shared his umbrella with her, symbolically putting his trust in her hands. Back in the present, Tako recalled how surprised she had been. Daikai, once unreachable, had sought her out himself. Daikai, without wasting time, revealed his goal. He wanted Tako to investigate a company, Delev Corporation. Its CDO was Yami Kanoku. This company also ran a lounge called Imprinter in Nishizabu. He asked for the company registry and financial statements from its inception. Tako asked for the deadline. Daikai said he needed everything within a week. Daikai then presented delicious food. Tako, overwhelmed by its taste, was briefly distracted. Daikai teased her, saying she had cleared a 3-day penalty. As Tako prepared to leave, she asked if the company was listed. Daikai instructed her to dig deep. She wondered what he was planning. Daikai spoke with intensity. He suspected that this company had several hidden issues. And now, it was time to expose them all to the world. With fire in his eyes, Daikai declared his mission. The rotten castle that GU had built, brick, by crushing people's lives and ambitions, wouldn't stand much longer. Every lie, every brick soaked in pain would be destroyed. No matter the cost, Daikai would bring it all down.